All right, I think we've given it a minute and it's just about time to get things underway. Welcome everyone. My name is Celine Coggins. I'm the Executive Director of Education, Grantmakers for Education, and we're here to discuss addressing inequity for students during school closures. And we've invited Charles Best from DonorsChoose to join us for this conversation. First, I want to say a couple of words about Grantmakers for Education and our role in this crisis. So for us, as the nation's largest kind of network of education grantmakers, what we're trying to do is, number one, connect our members, and number two, help them to find vehicles that can help get dollars to students in a way that is equitable, that is broad, and that is fast and effective. And so, so we invited DonorsChoose to come on the line because they have a very unique capacity to, number one, really know deeply what's going on in communities from kind of rural Idaho to cities in Florida and everything in between. And they've done a really interesting survey that's going to allow us to really kind of understand how teachers all around the country are seeing the needs that their students are facing in this very challenging moment in time. For the background that I have previously running Teach Plus, have a social media feed filled with basically the concerns and experiences of urban teachers around the country. I know that there are just really, really incredible challenges that they're seeing with their students, and students, in fact, that they're losing touch with and deeply worried about. And so, so we wanted to kind of have this conversation today to learn, number one, what's happening in the survey, and number two, how DonorsChoose is thinking about ensuring that dollars can flow to supporting the needs of students. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Charles, and I want to kind of, by way of housekeeping, encourage folks throughout this conversation to throw questions into the chat box. We are here to try to answer as many as we possibly can. So thanks so much, Charles. Take it away.
Awesome, Celine, thank you so much. Thank you to each of you for joining this. I can only imagine just how hard you're working to develop an education philanthropy response to the coronavirus crisis. And so just want to underscore gratitude to you for sparing what will just be a few minutes for me to share the results of a major survey we've just conducted of public school teachers in low-income communities and the needs that they foresee for their students during school closures, and to share with you a mechanism, a system that we are launching now to enable philanthropists large and small to deliver support directly to students who are learning from home. I am going to assume that you know the basics of DonorsChoose. And so I'm really just going to share that when we started 20 years ago at a public high school in the Bronx, where I was a history teacher, it was with the idea that there's a special kind of wisdom on the front lines, that classroom teachers often know their students' needs better than anybody else in the system. The site began when my colleagues and I were spending our own money on copy paper and pencils and talking in the teacher's lunchroom about books that we wanted our students to read, a field trip we wanted to take them on, a science experiment that just needed certain microscopes. And it was then that I felt that if we could tap into teachers' frontline wisdom, we might unleash micro solutions that were incredibly innovative and well-targeted and creative. And of course, I also assumed that if folks out there could see where their money was going, then my colleagues and I would be able to get our students those books, take them on that field trip. So in any case, that was the origin of DonorsChoose, and I emphasize this belief in the wisdom of the front lines and in a bottoms-up approach to educational solutions, because they will so inform the mechanism we've developed for responding to the coronavirus crisis. In any case, thanks to, in no small part, to GFE members, as well as to 4 million citizen donors on our site, 84% of all the public schools in America now have at least one teacher who has created a project request on our site. More than 500,000 teachers have gotten classroom project requests funded, and they come overwhelmingly from schools in low-income communities. And at that scale of participation, with that reach, DonorsChoose has really become a platform for donors large and small to deliver support directly to teachers and students in particular subject areas or communities. And it feels right now like direct support of teachers and students has never been more urgently needed, because our premise is that when students cannot go to school, when they are learning from home, the circumstances of their home environments, the resources available in their homes, are going to define their educations to an even greater degree. I have 2 kids in the house right now. They're upstairs, but we've got an iPad and a Chromebook, and we've got books in our house, and we've got art supplies, and my kids go to a school that's set up for remote learning. And when I think about all of the students, especially in low-income communities, who are in households that don't have those resources, I appreciate the degree to which coronavirus threatens to widen educational inequity in America. And so we've built a mechanism which recognizes that those students in low-income communities, their teachers know exactly which resources would enable those kids to continue learning from home. Classroom teachers know just which hygiene items, which shelf-stable groceries 10 of their students most need. They know which of their students need an internet connectivity device. They know just what books ought to be sent to all their students, which crayons and magnetiles should go to which kindergartners for their students to be able to continue learning from home. And so I'm going to share, before I share the survey results with you, I'm going to share the mechanism that we have developed. And it is one which enables us to give to a teacher in a high poverty public school a $1,000 educational funding credit, which the teacher can then spend on educational resources of their selection and put together essentially a personalized education care package sent directly to their students. The logistical mechanism here is what you could think of as an education gift card that can only be spent on resources and items that DonorsChoose has selected based on the results of the survey that I will show you. So a teacher who has received such a funding credit, such an education gift card, can spend it on all manner of books. They cannot spend it on adult romance novels. They cannot spend it on religious texts, but they can spend it on all manner of books geared to children. They can use this education gift card to purchase shelf-stable groceries and have them shipped to their students' homes. They cannot purchase Swiss chocolate with the education gift card. They can purchase hygiene items. They cannot purchase lipstick. They will be able to purchase a device that's really well priced. They will not be able to go to town purchasing consumer electronics. And the specs for these education gift cards have now been met by Amazon. We've developed exactly this education gift card that's going live right now, and we've opened that invitation to other retailers and are talking with other folks as well to see if they too can meet our integrity standards for this education-only gift card, which will enable teachers to put together education care packages personalized to each of their students and have those materials delivered straight to their students' homes. This mechanism—
Can I ask a question real quick?
Please.
When you say the least resourced, how are you cutting that line?
Thank you for asking. The survey that we'll roll into right now is of teachers at schools with 75% or greater free and reduced lunch rates. But honestly, knowing that demand is going to be so much greater than whatever we raise, we plan to start with teachers at schools with 90% or higher free and reduced lunch rates, so that we're really working in schools where virtually every student is from a low-income community. One thing I should call out is that these education funding credits, represent a system that we have built outside of the normal project-based flow of DonorsChoose. And partly for that reason, DonorsChoose is going to be foregoing any payment processing fee, any 15% allocation that donors usually include. We will not be seeking or soliciting any operating funds. 100% will be going straight into these education-only gift cards for teachers to create these personalized education care packages for their students, which would be shipped within days. So I've been talking about this teacher survey that I'm really excited to show you now, because it's what we based this system upon. Just this past Monday night, which is only 4 days ago, we sent a survey to a sample of teachers at high poverty public schools. By Tuesday morning, 5,000 teachers had responded to the survey. And here is what they shared with us. This quote from one teacher kind of captured the sentiments of really the majority of those 5,000 teachers. And the first question we asked was simply, are you worried about coronavirus negatively impacting your students' learning? You will not be in any way intrigued or surprised to see that basically every single public school teacher working in a high poverty context is worried that the crisis is going to negatively impact their students' learning. That is because when we ask teachers to estimate just how many of your students do not have the resources at home to continue learning, the 5,000 teachers we surveyed, on average estimated that 68%, more than 2/3 of their particular students did not have resources at home sufficient to continue learning. To put an extra point on it, a mere 8% of the teachers who completed the survey said that they had everything they needed to start running a remote learning program. And yet in that survey, we did at least have a logistical glimmer of hope, which is that more than 90% of teachers either have their students' addresses on hand or would be able to obtain them within a week. It's actually 70% of that 91%, 70% already have all of their students' home addresses. So they would not need to wait 1 hour to put together an education care package and have them sent to their students. Though we were actually interested that fully 66% of teachers said that even though they have their students' addresses, they would still prefer to have materials shipped to their home where they would personally do the delivery. And this is being mindful of students experiencing homelessness or students whose buildings may not be safe places for parcel packages to be stored and provided. When we asked what are the resources that you would put in a personalized education care package, teachers started by listing computers or tablets. And in spirit of transparency, $1,000 education funding credit is surely not sufficient for a teacher to equip each of their students with a device, but we are going to make sure that within the approved catalog of resources that a teacher can shop from will be at least a couple very well priced, very inexpensive devices. 41% of teachers plan to put food items in their education care packages. And one thing we know is that there are any number of districts who have set up grab and go options for parents to go to a pickup point and get the free breakfast and lunch that the district is underwriting. But we know that there are other districts where such a policy has not been put in place. And so in those districts, teachers are clearly going to be shopping for shelf-stable groceries to have sent directly to their students. And for those of you who, like me, are a little bit old school and like opening up a physical book, you can take reassurance that teachers are prioritizing physical books over internet connectivity devices, although clearly lots of teachers want those as well. This finally puts a real point on it, the fact that 3 times as many teachers say that they have none of what they need to run a remote learning program as compared to 8% who do have everything they need to be up and running with remote learning. The difference there are the teachers who say that they have most or at least some of what they need. To give you a sense of the addressable market or the demand out there, nearly 70,000 public school teachers at high poverty public schools, those where 75% or more of students qualify for free or reduced lunch, have created project requests on our site just within the last year, and are therefore people we are in very close touch with and whom we could empower with these education funding credits to put together personalized education care packages for their students. That covers it. I promised to keep remarks brief so that we could really focus on your questions, whether about the logistics of how people can provide direct support to students in the form of the resources that those students' teachers think are most vital, or about the survey itself. Celine, should I throw it back to you?
Yes, we've already got some questions, and I have more, but I want to encourage people to throw those into the chat box. You also can take yourself off mute. If you have a question, it just ends up getting sometimes a little messy. So let me start by saying, number one, with the data, will these slides be shared so that we can amplify? We are recording this conversation, and so we will be able to post it on our website. And Charles, I assume that that's good with you?
Absolutely. We'll be distributing the deck.
Great. And then second is folks are very interested in local data. Are you able to cut the data by certain localities and provide information there?
With 5,000 teacher respondents, I'm confident we would be able to cut it by state. And when there is a philanthropist really interested in supporting teachers in a particular city or state, we hope that they will reach out to one of those two folks that you see there, because we'd love to engage with you on how we can both ascertain and deliver on at-home needs of students in a particular community.
Great. I was really interested, Charles, and this is an evolution from when we even spoke earlier this week. So you did note that teachers generally have or have access to their students' addresses, but they would be more comfortable receiving the materials themselves and distributing them for a variety of reasons, like students who are homeless and students who are in environments where, I think you didn't say it, but probably there's a fear that they'll get stolen.
That's right.
So how are you thinking about that? Is that the direction that you're moving in, that they will be able to be shipped to teachers? Do you have any say in that, I guess, at that stage of the process?
Yes, and Celine, to your very point, we were not expecting to see just such a proportion of teachers say that they are ready to deliver the materials themselves to their students' homes. And I think what's critical is that teachers have the flexibility to have not only choose exactly which materials are most important for their individual students to have at home to keep learning, but for those same teachers to also be able to customize and personalize delivery. I think it could very well be that some teachers have enough confidence in 10 students' home locations to do direct shipping there, and that they will want to do the delivery themselves with another subset of our students. I think the key is that each student is different, each community is different, and by letting the teachers who know those students best and who live in those communities create education micro-solutions, we'll be able to respond. Each delivery mechanism will be particular to the individual situation.
Yes. So you know I'm a teacher advocate as well. It doesn't surprise me for a minute to think of teachers driving around and touching base with their students and dropping off these materials. But Jennifer Allen actually asked the follow-up question that I was thinking. So it is likely to be the case that shelter-in-place orders are going to extend beyond Washington, New York, now California. That would certainly impact teachers' ability to distribute, probably. Any thoughts on that?
You know, as I was giving that answer, Celine, I was thinking along some of those same lines, and it's entirely possible that teachers' survey responses this past Monday night, prior to some of the shelter-in-place restrictions, would change based on those restrictions. It could also be that a student delivering vital learning materials to their students would be exempted in the same way that grocery shopping is, but I'm now absolutely outside my territory on that.
Yep, totally fair. Totally fair. We're all making this up as we go along. So another question. So $1,000. I have two questions on the $1,000. Number one, what if a particular request from a teacher receives $800 and not $1,000? And then second is, how are you thinking about that 1,000? Is that an even distribution? If there are 30 kids in your class, you have to order the same things for each of the 30 kids. Is that subject to the teacher's discretion? How are you thinking about the $1,000?
I'm so glad we're talking about that. First, I want to underscore that the teacher will not have to take a cookie cutter approach to what's in each education care package. A teacher could have shelf-stable groceries and hygiene items in one education care package for one of their students, and in another education care package for another of their same students have magnetiles and a robotics kit. So it is truly about empowering teachers to personalize each education care package based on the home circumstances and the learning needs of their individual students. Good question as well on what if one of these, what if there is partial funding? And that's the right question based on the traditional DonorsChoose model of a teacher writing an essay for a project and delineating exactly what they want up front. But in fact, we are going to step outside of that system. Effectively, DonorsChoose is declaring a state of emergency on our own project-based model. And after identifying the right teachers, not just based on school economic need, but also on a survey, a pre-survey that we will conduct where the teacher will give a sketch of what they want to do for their students and talk about their need, but it'll be much more abbreviated than the typical project format. We're going to then empower the teacher to go shopping, which, long story short, means that we will only be contacting teachers when we have $1,000 funding credits lined up. So we will sidestep the partial funding situation. There will not be a teacher asked to make do with $100 of the 1,000 or even 800 of the 1,000.
Can I ask one more question? And then we have two good ones, or a comment and a question in the chat box. So I know, because we just did some research in your amazing database, and then I've talked to a bunch of teachers about it, that some teachers, if they get something filled quickly, will hop right back on and say, it looks like there's a good funder community right now. I'm going to request another. Any limitations on that?
Yes, and Ali, would love to hear your additional thoughts, but I think the short of it is this is going to be one funding credit per teacher. There, fortunately or unfortunately, a teacher won't be able to raise their hand repeatedly. Ali, anything you'd add on that front, or on prior questions that we've covered?
Yeah, I think you covered it, Charles. Yeah, one per teacher. In this scenario, we know we're going to have more need than there is funding for. So we almost certainly will not be able to open up for more funding per teacher or for multiple credits per teacher.
Okay. And again, you are in every state in the country. Teachers are, I mean, my best impression is it's essentially a household name for teachers. And so this will be something that teachers everywhere can access.
That's right. Although to your everywhere point, we really actually want to restrict this initially, not out of exclusionary motivations, but just knowing that demand is so much greater. We'll start with it just being available to teachers at public schools with 90% or greater free lunch rates. But Celine, to your point, that covers every state and city. Really
helpful. Great. Okay, so a couple of things. Number one, let's see. So to the point of teachers having an interest in actually bringing the materials to students themselves, we had a comment about state chiefs may be able to inform governors about this promising practice and provide an exception for delivery of instructional materials to students as long as CDC guidelines are followed. So yes to that as an important comment. And then
seriously,
we have a question about, did you ask questions about Wi-Fi access? Does a district or school have to be set up for remote learning to make a device useful?
I'm so glad you bring that up, and we'll just go to that slide right here where indeed you see that 32% of teachers said that they would want to put internet connectivity devices in at least some of the education care packages they would create for their students. What is most important for us as we evaluate which internet connectivity devices to qualify inside of the allowed catalog of stuff a teacher can shop for, what's most critical is that no student ever get a MiFi device that requires their family to enter a credit card number and set up an account, and then after the 3 months are over, all of a sudden the family is getting charged. That item will not be allowed in the cart, and indeed we're only going to be looking at prepaid mobile hotspots that do not require the student or student's family to sign up for anything or be obligated for anything.
Oh, good question. Do you verify teachers to make sure that requesters are teachers?
Great question. That is part of the core DonorsChoose value proposition, and it's why we feel like, in a sense, we've been working for 20 years for this moment, because we've got this community of more than 500,000 teachers over the last several years in 84% of all the public schools in America who've created classroom project requests on our site, and who in so doing got identity verified, got verified in terms of their responsiveness and responsibility and dedication as teachers, in terms of their ability to capture feedback on the impact of funded resources. So we've got this huge community of teachers who are not just verified as public school employees, but who have shown themselves to be especially dedicated educators, and shown themselves to be especially responsive and responsible when entrusted with micro funding amounts.
That's super helpful. A couple of questions about technology. So on the mobile hotspots, do you have any knowledge of kind of what's good and what's not? And I know that there are like organizations like Comcast that are thinking about providing free internet. Have you had are you linked into any of those conversations in a way to say, don't get this extra because we know that Comcast is doing this for free in your area? And this might go to the, we don't want people signing up and then getting charged 2 months down the line when the free access ends.
Absolutely. We are just now engaging in those conversations. If there's anyone you think we should be talking to, Comcast obviously top of the list, but if there's anyone you think we should be talking to, please do let us know. And we will do our darndest to identify region-specific opportunities. I think we're also going to rely to some degree on teachers to know what's available in their districts. It's why, for example, we are going to trust that teachers will not be shopping for shelf-stable groceries in their education care packages if they are in districts that are doing a good job of providing grab-and-go breakfast and lunch. So I think it'll be a combination of having those conversations at the top level, but also believing in teachers, especially if we're talking about the most motivated, dedicated educators who use DonorsChoose, to be aware of opportunities and to not spend their education gift card in a way that would be redundant to other offerings or services.
Couple more. So on this topic of meeting ongoing need and supporting learning over time, things like food aren't really a sustainable solution linked to the ability to learn. So can you talk about your decision to not go more narrow and just focus on learning resources?
I think we felt we wanted to open it up, and Ali, you should share as well. But we wanted to open it up, first of all, just because we believe in teachers to know just what's best for their students, and what we felt was necessary was to make sure the teacher cannot spend their education credit on anything clearly inappropriate. But within that, to trust in teachers to know just what their students need. And we see a critical mass of projects on our site already prior to coronavirus from teachers who are seeking what we call life essentials, nutritious snacks for kids who are coming to school hungry, coats for kids who are coming to school cold. Ali, would you add anything to that?
Just that we've built the categories of items that teachers can use their credits toward based on the survey results. And in the survey results, we did see teachers identifying nervousness about students being fed as one of their main concerns, especially for this audience of teachers who primarily work with students that are lowest income schools.
Yeah, that's helpful. So curious to think if you're thinking more about extended the long term. So $1,000 per teacher is fantastic, but will only go so far for so long. Are there any thoughts about how to support learning over time, especially given the only one-time access?
We are, in spirit of transparency, we were thinking just last night about middle and high school teachers who may have 100 students and for whom a $1,000 funding credit is not rich, to say the least. So I can say mechanically, we actually have the option to go up to a $2,000 education gift card. And while we don't want a teacher repeatedly raising their hand, that is ruled out, but certainly we'd love to be able to support those teachers again. And I will just call out and own the fact that this is providing direct help, direct relief right now, and it does not represent a systemic solution. But I think I'd also point out that I think so many of the resources that teachers put in their education care packages will continue to bear fruit post-coronavirus, right? Like if a teacher has figured out just what 6 books ought to be in a kid's home, that's a gift that won't stop giving after the crisis resolves itself.
That's helpful, and you answered my question. I was going to ask that question about, yes, this is great for an elementary school teacher who has 26 kids, and less great probably for a middle or high school teacher. But obviously you can't do everything, and so the parameters make sense. Another question is, can I search the DonorsChoose database to see how many teachers in my state are currently participating?
Allie, you want to take that one?
Yeah, it would be challenging to do directly yourself, but our contact info is up on the screen. So if you have questions about a particular state, don't hesitate to reach out and we can run those numbers for you very easily.
And is it possible to target a donation and say, I only want to support teachers in Nevada or something like that?
We can geographically target. State is the the smallest level we can go to, just because this is we built this in 3 days. So we can direct funds to a particular state, but unlike typically on DonorsChoose, we can't go as narrow as a specific city or a specific district right now.
Okay. And our requests only accepted during the traditional school year calendar. Given these unique times, summer learning is going to be a time to catch up.
Historically on DonorsChoose, you can post a request year-round. For this particular initiative, we're kind of building it as we go. So we're launching it Monday, and our hope is to continue to fund these as long as funding allows. So I think we would be totally open to continuing to provide resources to students at their homes over the summer, as long as the crisis lasts and as long as their funding lasts.
That's helpful. I have a question about just your expectations around timeline to response. So clearly you are acting with urgency. That's clear. At the same time, people have need yesterday. So how are you thinking about, there's a fulfillment process on your site, then there's a selection process by teachers, and then there's a delivery process, which presumably is just another probably 24 hours. How are you thinking about timeline from the day a teacher goes online, maybe Monday, to when she could reasonably get materials to her students?
Yes, to your point, Celine, we think that speed is of the essence. So on this very Monday, gosh, I guess day after tomorrow, we're going to be sending a test run of these education gift cards to a subset of teacher users, just using our own organizational funds to back them. A teacher who gets one of these education gift cards will be able to shop immediately. The first education gift card has been built to our spec by Amazon. And if the teacher is not an Amazon Prime member, working with Amazon, we're going to be giving them Amazon Prime membership. So theoretically, a teacher could get this gift code, shop within the hour, and see materials arriving 2 days later. I know that some materials are now no longer qualifying for Prime shipping. But definitely our hope is that if we're talking books and some of the items that are not flying off the shelves, that it really would be within 2 days.
Nice. And also, if a teacher doesn't have Prime, they get Prime.
That's right.
As a teacher fan, I love that.
That's right. That's right. For 3 months, it'll cover them certainly for the duration of this initiative. That's right, Celine.
They can use the TV part.
I never thought of that. You're right. You're right.
Nice. That's great. Great, great, great. Especially teachers of low-income kids are where my heart is. So I love that. I have another question here. How can people on the line here help to spread the word to target teachers? Is there a role that people here can play to make sure that that they can support what's already in place?
Please reach out to Allie and me so we can work with you on engaging teachers in a given state. Honestly, we just know that the number of teachers who are already qualified as working in 90% plus free lunch schools, who've shown themselves to be super dedicated educators, who we know will fill out a pre-survey if sent to them, it is a multiple of what we're almost surely capable of raising. So I think in terms of outreach, we're looking for help to open doors to folks who might want to directly support teachers and students.
And to clarify, and this is more for your average salaried person like me than for the foundation side people, you don't have to give $1,000. You could give $100 en route to the $1,000.
You could give $10 en route to that $1,000 credit.
Okay, that's great. Can you create a way for a teacher to include a note or instructions to a student that's longer than the space that Amazon Prime usually gives?
Oh, cool. I love thinking of that. And indeed, we were also just last night brainstorming about the parent communication that should accompany the arrival of these education care packages. And I think to the point of the question, we absolutely will encourage teachers to not confine themselves to the Amazon gift note form field, but to contact their students directly with a whole lot more context and guidance and instructions on using the materials to full effect.
I think that's right. That's nice. So another kind of question, comment on, many districts are right now just putting the remote learning approaches into place. So there might be ways for teachers to connect with their district to leverage what they're doing against what the district is doing. Talk a little bit about how you're thinking of streamlining those processes, eliminating redundancy where possible.
Yeah, Allie, you want to cover that?
Yeah, so the good news is there's precedent for this. So in general, when teachers are using DonorsChoose, this audience of folks who are already engaged with us know that we encourage them to follow all their district guidelines, to notify their principal about what they're asking for. So those elements of our platform will carry over in the sense that teachers know we expect that of them. And so we would hope that they certainly would think about what their district is offering and would consult with all the various administrators who might have input into what they should send home that would best leverage what districts are also doing. So we definitely don't want to supplant anything that districts are doing. Our hope is that this will supplement.
Great. And are you in communication with any districts about trying to do more in a particular district? I know in some cases you have districts where teachers are very heavy users versus districts that are lesser users. Any conversations like that? Granted that it's week 1, day 4 or something of this whole plan.
Yeah, I think we're, as you said, it's sort of day 1, week 1. We have a team, a district relationships team that is certainly in communication with all of the superintendents. We're sort of treating this the way we do disaster recovery. So when there's a situation where a tornado or a hurricane has destroyed a school or a classroom, we work with teachers to help them request what they need to rebuild. This is totally unprecedented, but we think it's most akin to that. So similarly to how we do in those situations, we're certainly making everything we're doing public and inviting our district administrator friends and everybody who serves the students that we also serve to reach out to us with questions and ideas.
And a comment that we got was just around some of those communication companies like Comcast and Cox that are offering free internet. They might be good for getting the word out on what you're doing as a complement to what they're doing. Internet alone without devices is obviously not a very powerful tool. So that I think is an interesting and good comment. Another question, if a donor wanted to give money for distribution of education gift cards in a specific geographic area, would that be allowable?
Yes, we can target gift cards from a particular funder to a particular state. That's the level of geographic specificity we're working with right now.
And okay, so I'm going to give you one or two more questions, and we'll see if there are others that come up in the next couple of minutes. I encourage you all, these have been some really great questions, and I think really covered the waterfront, but if you have more, definitely throw them in. So how are you thinking about equity, even kind of across classes? Right now, it sounds like you're at the only eligibility is schools with 90% poverty rates or higher, and then you might go down to schools with 70%, 75% poverty rates or higher. What happens if I'm a teacher in a, in a school that has a 50% poverty rate? How are you responding to them now? They just...
Yeah, I think we, it sort of breaks our hearts that we have to pick and choose, but given the state of what we're doing, our hope, our dream would be if we could raise enough funding, we'd love to open this opportunity to any teacher who has students who have need, even if it's only some of their students. But given that we have to start somewhere with the funds that we're hoping to raise, our thought was it's most objective and equitable to start in the communities where we know students have the most need.
And that leads me to one other related question. So typically on a site, a teacher can hop on and request something within a set of given categories. Say I'm a teacher in a lower income community, in a higher income community. Can I go on and request something different? Like, is the $1,000 credit what you all are doing now, or is this one slice of what you're doing now?
Yeah, the regular website is still open and teachers can post requests. I will say we're holding all shipments right now, given that the vast majority of public schools are closed, and that's typically where we ship materials. But this shipping to students' homes is, of course, totally brand new and is only part of this special initiative that's focusing on our highest poverty students first. So other teachers could still use the site. As we see how the situation unfolds, we may reopen shipping, and I certainly hope we will ahead of back to school as schools reopen.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then we have a question about how easy, hard, possible would it be to get into city and community level targeting for giving? That does make it more attractive for many of the donors. Many have city-based strategies, that type of thing.
Yeah, today already, this is the fourth time I've gotten this question. So I'm going to take it back to the team, not in this session, in other calls I've had as well. So I'm definitely going to take that back to the team, see if it's possible. Our hope is that even funders who have a particular focus, like Tulsa, Oklahoma, understanding how great the need is, if they have the budget, would be open to also helping, their fellow students in Oklahoma City. So our hope is that happens. If it doesn't, and if we find that this is a big barrier to getting funding to the teachers who need it, I think it's possible that we'll try to see if we can more mimic the original DonorsChoose model, which does allow targeting down to the district, city, individual school, and so forth.
And I will say, so of course I know that many funders have a city-based strategy. I also am hearing a lot from our funders that there's a concern about inequity and the absence of community foundation level support in rural areas. And so to some extent, your state-based strategy that focuses on income level allows both high need students in cities and also high need students in rural areas. So there is a value there that I think runs counter, but is also important to funders, at least in what I'm hearing. So that's for you all to figure out. Okay, last question. How are you determining free and reduced lunch rates for a district, since most districts with over 70% or so are really 100%?
We use NCES data, and we do it at the school level. So we're looking at individual schools where 90% or more of the student body is eligible for free lunch. So we're using the data available to us, which right now is NCES.
Okay. And those are also things that you all have navigated for years and, and kind of have standard practice around.
That's exactly right. So the way that we define schools based on their economic need level has not changed. That's the same definitions that folks are used to seeing on the DonorsChoose site when they give to an individual project.
Okay, that's helpful. Well, I am going to ask you guys on the DonorsChoose side if you have any kind of closing comments, ideas for how people can, well, easy to be in touch with you since your email addresses are up on the screen. I can vouch for the fact that Charles is unbelievably responsive, like on a dime, and so so that's you know, I think a real credit to you. And so any other comments, any things you'd like people to know, any more about how they can help? And I do want to reiterate what you all said earlier, which is not a dollar from these donations goes to DonorsChoose as an organization. We know that all nonprofits are in a turbulent time, and so I think that really is remarkable for you all to say we are a vehicle for giving to reach students all around the country in high need. We are not taking in dollars to support our own operations. So really important to kind of renote that. I will turn it over to you if you have anything more to add, and then we'll wrap.
So I just want to thank you for the kind words personally, and the kind words about our organizational decision to channel all the funds, and for this opportunity to chat with your members. One piece that I failed to mention is that we will know what items were purchased in aggregate with these education gift cards. We will be able to run analyses showing, not just based on a survey of intention, but a look at actual action, what materials teachers believe are most necessary in student homes during this time period. And the results of that data could potentially spur much larger action and be one of those instances where an act of direct relief and support serves to help the system itself respond at an even broader level. Allie, any final thoughts you have?
No, just that we're grateful for this opportunity to share what we found in our survey with you all, and we appreciate all the thoughtful questions and all the hard work you all are doing to help all the teachers and students who are in such an unprecedented and difficult situation.
Well, yeah, so I see some notes of gratitude from folks in the chat box. Really just incredibly quick and responsive and thoughtful and creative. And so, you know, I feel like I wanted to bring our members to this as a vehicle, but I also am going to be bring my friends who are lower level givers to this as well. And then if there is like a one-pager to share, to push the word out to SEAs, we have some people who have the capacity to do that, to other funders, to teachers, please just send that along. GFE has a resources page and a place for funders to give, and so we'll get all of this up on that site. But in the meanwhile, thank you so much. Good luck with the launch of this, and please keep us up to date. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great Friday afternoon.